everyone! Here we go again for the most awaited video presentation. For today's topic, let's discuss about ethnocentrism and relativism. Of course, at the end of this lesson, you can define what is ethnocentrism and relativism. You will be able to describe and give examples of ethnocentrism and cultural relativism, and you can show or create generalization to achieve relativism. And now, let's define first what is ethnocentrism. Means judging another culture solely by the values and standards of one's own culture. In the term of anthropologists uses to describe the opinion that one's own way of life is natural or correct. Some would simply call it cultural ignorance. Means that one may see his or her own culture as the correct way of living. On the other hand, ethnocentrism can lead to negative judgment of the behaviors of groups or societies. It can also lead to discrimination against people who are different, but can create loyalty among the same social or people group in the same society. And now, let's proceed to the ethnocentric, or the individuals judge other groups relative to their own ethnic group or culture. It shows itself in a lack of respect for other ways of life. A person feels that his or her own nation or group is the cultural center of the world. Specifically concerned for language, behavior, customs, and religion. These ethnic distinctions and subdivisions are served to define each culture ethnicity's unique cultural identity. According to William G. Sumner, ethnocentrism is defined as the technical name for the view of things in which one's own group is the center of everything, and all others are scaled and rated with reference to it. Also, he further characterized it as often leading to pride, vanity, beliefs of one's own group's superiority. On the other hand, in the study of anthropology, ethnocentric are the people born into a particular culture that grow up absorbing the values and behaviors of the culture. It literally means that will develop a worldview that considers their culture to be the norm or standard. Take note that if people then experience other cultures that have different values and normal behaviors, they will find that the thought patterns appropriate to their birth culture are not appropriate for the new cultures. However, since people are accustomed to their birth culture, it can be difficult for them to see the behaviors of people from a different culture from the viewpoint of the culture rather than from their own. Moreover, here are some examples of ethnocentrisms, and the sample pictures shows colonialism, where it can be defined as cultural domination with enforced social change, and refers to the social system in which the political conquest by one society of another that leads to cultural domination with enforced social change. Also, it includes religiocentric that contracts claiming a divine association like divine nation. And now, let us know what is cultural relativism. Is the principle that an individual person's beliefs and activities should be understood by others. For instance, it refers to not judging a culture to our own standards of what is right or wrong, strange or normal, but instead, we should try to understand cultural practices of other groups in its own cultural context. Hence, cultural relativism was in part a response to Western ethnocentrism, As we defined earlier, ethnocentrism may take different obvious forms, views, and opinions, in which one consciously believes that one's people's arts are the most beautiful, values the most virtuous, and beliefs the most truthful. Likewise, according to Bo's first articulated idea in 1887, civilization is not something absolute but it is relative. And our ideas and conceptions are true only so far as our civilization goes. However, both did not coin the term. Furthermore, he argued that one's culture may mediate and thus limits one's perception in less obvious ways. He understood culture to include not only certain tastes in food, art, music, beliefs about religion, and many more, but also he assumed a much broader notion of culture. Definitely, he articulates the totality of the mental and physical reactions and activities that characterize the behavior of the individuals. Composing a social group collectively and individually in relation to their natural environment, to other groups, to members of the group itself, and each individual to himself. Somehow, this topic has the understanding of culture confronts anthropologists with two problems. First, how to escape the unconscious bands of one's own culture, which inevitably bias our perceptions of and reactions to the world. Simply, as human beings who are accustomed to behaving consciously and unconsciously in specific ways, we often to recognize another perspective as it is presented to us. Second, how to make sense of an unfamiliar culture by showing more interest and stop comparing cultures, generalizing about human nature, or discovering universal laws of cultural development than in understanding particular culture in those cultures' own terms. In general, of this view, ethnocentrism stands as the tendency to assume that one's own culture and way of life represent the norm or are superior to all others, while cultural relativism literally means the viewing of people's behavior from the perspective of their own culture. Regardless of where you live in this pair, chances will eventually interact in some way with a culture that is different from your own. When people think about culture, their first thoughts involve race or ethnicity. Culture goes far beyond that. However, in fact, we are all members of various cultural groups, and our cultural identities develop based on the influence of these memberships. Like most important things that make you who you are, the development of your cultural identity is an ongoing process. As we are exposed to different sets of beliefs and values, we may adapt other cultural beliefs that were not part of our original makeup. In this way, culture is dynamic and complex. That's all. Thank you for listening and watching. I hope you will learn something new.